state of Nevada, we're going to make sure that you reside in one of the states that's eligible to apply to UNR Med. And for that, you'll go to our website and you can see all of the states. They include Alaska, Arizona, Oregon, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. I hope I didn't miss one. Once that secondary application is received, you will be invited to participate in a multi-interview if you're a Nevada eligible applicant. If you're out of state, you will actually undergo a secondary review stage because we receive more out-of-state applications than we have spaces for interviews. As the time progresses, you will receive an invitation to attend a preview event where you'll have a chance to learn a little bit more about our culture and who we are as an institution. You'll be encouraged to get your financial aid submitted, your FAFSA. Your application will be reviewed. We start reviewing applications in December unless you're an early decision applicant, in which case you'll be reviewed in September. Then decision notifications happen between December and March. We'll host events for admitted students, including a virtual first look, an on-campus second look, and then you'll spend the remainder of your time before you matriculate to medical school completing your immunizations, background checks, and a variety of other enrollment steps. So that's just a really quick overview of what this process looks like. What I think we're here for today, what I get from the questions that were asked is you want to know, what are we going to be looking for in your application? How are we going to assess it? And the most important thing to know about UNR Med is that we believe in and we utilize a holistic admission review process. And what that means is that the criteria that we use to assess you are based upon our mission. And we are going to provide each and every application with a comprehensive and individualized review. So comprehensive means that we're going to look at every component within your application. Individualized means that we're going to look at you as the person that you are. We're not doing this to compare you against anyone else. We want to understand who you are as a person, and we want to look holistically at the things that you bring. To do that, we're going to give balanced consideration to three things: to your variety of experiences, to the attributes or characteristics that you have as an individual, and to your academic metrics. So we really recognize that there is value in diverse perspectives and backgrounds, and we want to fill our class with individuals who come from all kinds of backgrounds, academics, geography, experiences, all of those types of things. If you're not familiar with the competencies that the AAMC has identified as important for entering students, this is a really important thing to know, especially when it comes to secondaries and multi-mini interviews. The competencies that we're looking for encompass your foundational knowledge of the sciences, your thinking and reasoning skills, and your pre-professional competencies. So we want to know, do you have a service orientation? Are you teamwork focused? Do you have strong communication skills? Do you have the capacity to improve? Are you reliable? Are you resilient? Are you responsible and ethical? All of these things are the competencies that we want to see in physicians. So why is understanding these competencies and why is holistic important for you? It's because that really in the end, we want you to use your application to demonstrate three basic things. We want to understand your passion for medicine, your readiness for medical school, and that's being academically ready for the rigors of a professional education, as well as professionally ready, because it won't be long when you get to medical school that you will be asked to start meeting patients and providing care to others. And we want to understand that you have developed the professional skills, the maturity, the self-awareness to engage in that type of practice. Finally, for us, what we're looking for is fit with UNR Med. We want to know how you are going to add value to our student body, to our community, and to the profession. And to do that, it's incredibly important that you understand what our vision as a school is, what our mission is, what our core values are, and what our culture is. Because in every aspect of your application, starting with your personal statement and everything included with MCAS, as well as the secondary and MMI, we want to see passion, readiness, and fit. So how does that fit in with secondary and multi-mini interviews? Really, it's not about what we're assessing, it's what you're demonstrating. So let me emphasize that MMIs provide you with the opportunity to really demonstrate your passion for medicine, your readiness for medical school, and your fit with UNR Med's culture. And those are the three things that again and again we're going to return to. So one tip about this process is that it's not only what secondaries and MMIs tell us about you, but you can also use these questions and this process to better understand who we are. If we ask a question on a secondary, if we give you a scenario in an MMI interview, essentially we're disclosing who we are as an institution. And so I really encourage you to pay attention to those questions and think about what it is we're trying to understand about you and what we're telling you about us. So the secondary. The medical school applications are sent once we get your MCAS and once MCAS has verified your application. Now that application goes out 1 week, gives you 1 week to complete it once you receive an email inviting you to complete the secondary. However, the good news is that that's not the first time you can see secondary questions. Those questions are already posted on our application requirements page on our website. And so you can actually, once you've got MCAS taken care of, you're done with your personal statement, you can start looking at those questions. In addition, our secondary is going to learn a little bit more about your residency. We want to confirm that you're eligible to apply. We're going to ask you to list how you have fulfilled the prerequisites to apply to UNR Med. And you either need to have classes completed or have a plan to complete them before your matriculation to medical school. We're going to ask you to tell us which 3 letters of evaluation you want our admissions committee to focus on. Now, you should be in AMCAS selecting which 3, but it seems to be one of those things that MCAS is not designed well, because often we'll get 4 or 5 when we actually only want 3 letters of evaluation. So you can't change that once you've submitted MCAS. So if you ended up not designating the 3 for UNR Med, this is your opportunity to do it again. And on your secondary, you'll be able to tell us which 3 letters of evaluation you want our committee members to read. There's also going to be an opportunity for you to tell us about UNR Med connections. Do you know current students, alumni, faculty, staff? Have you met with me and you want to put me on the list of connections? I want to make sure you understand that the purpose of those connections does not have anything to do with how we're assessing your application. That's information that we utilize if you're an admitted student, so we can make sure to keep you connected with the individuals that you've told us you already know from UNR Med. You're also going to submit a professional photo. This photo should be something that you feel really comfortable with the entire world seeing and all the admissions committee members. So dress appropriately, find a good, even background. You don't want hidden messages coming into play by what's in your background or that sort of thing. So really just a professional photo. And then of course, the most important part of the secondary is the essays. So again, this is your opportunity to demonstrate your passion for medicine, your readiness for medical school, and how you are going to add value to our culture and to our mission and to our vision of a healthy Nevada and to our core values. You're going to have 6 questions where you can do this. And by the time we're done reading them, our admissions committee members want to know how you're going to thrive in our particular educational program in both the classroom and the clinical environment. We're going to want to know how you're going to add value to our culture, to our Nevada community, and to the profession. And we're going to want to know how you embrace our vision, our mission, and our core values. We're a very small school. This means that every individual who's here, from our students to our staff to our faculty, are all contributing to the culture that we develop here. And we want individuals who appreciate and share our values. So briefly, our mission, it's all about improving the health and well-being of Nevadans. And we do that through education, through clinical care, through research, but also through a culture of diversity and inclusion. Our core values, people are a strength. As I said, we are a small institution. That means every person matters. We get to know our students, we get to know one another, and we see you as essentially a representative of our community. Our second core value is that we innovate and improve. So we love to see candidates who are all about constantly improving, learning new things, finding better ways to do things, being problem solvers. Here at UNR Med, our value is that we serve with integrity. And so demonstrating that you have a sound, ethical, moral judgment, that you are someone who respects and is honest with others, shows integrity in your words as well as your actions. And then finally, our core value is that we succeed with trust and respect. And so we are looking for individuals who are always looking outward at how they can support others, respect others, and be there as someone that others can trust. We also have a diversity statement that is a really important part of who we are as an institution. We firmly believe that diversity in the classroom creates a better learning environment for everyone. We definitely believe that our graduates need to be culturally competent, because if they are serving everyone in Nevada, that means that they will be serving individuals that don't always look like them, talk like them, or believe what they do. But they still need to do that with respect and trust. So I've got a tip down here for you, and we will post these links. If you want to understand how to answer secondary questions so that you show that you add value, it's important for you to know what we value. And so I've got links for our medical education program objectives. So if you want to know what it takes to thrive as a student at UNR Med, read this. If you want to understand more about our mission, visit our vision, mission, and core values page. If you want to understand the professional characteristics that we're looking for beyond the AAMC competencies, you might read our code of professionalism for students. And finally, if you want to understand more about Healthy Nevada and why that's so important to us, I invite you to read our Office of Statewide Initiatives page, understand how we are working to make an impact on Nevada, our rural communities, our underserved communities. And then finally, I always encourage you to follow us, our newsletter, Nevada Weekly. And this will give you information about what's going on at our school. It will tell you what we value. And a really great feature of that is that monthly, our dean posts his reflections, and you can also read those on our website. So those are all great ways to better understand who we are, so that when you're answering your secondary, you're doing it with our school in mind, because that's what we're hoping to learn. So let me just go through some of these secondary questions. And what I would ask is that as we look at them, you think about, what is it about this question that is going to help me demonstrate my passion and my readiness and my fit? So if we look at the first one, it says, what does UNR Med's vision of a healthy Nevada mean to you? What do you consider the most significant obstacle that Nevada must overcome to achieve our vision? And how would you, as a UNR Med student, actively engage in creating a solution? So this is one of those questions where you're really going to be able to address all three of those factors that I shared with you. You're going to be able to talk about your passion and how it aligns with our particular mission, vision, and culture. And you're going to be able to show that you're ready for this by talking about how you as a student would engage to make things better in our state. Another question, describe a time when you faced a significant life crisis, a personal struggle, or an academic or professional failure. How did you respond? What did you learn? And how did the experience influence your future actions? So give this one a little bit of thought. What are we going to learn about you by how you answer this question? So if you look at AAMC's core competencies, it says how important it is that medical students are resilient and adaptable. This is your opportunity to show that you are in fact resilient and adaptable. Another factor that's really important at UNR Med is maturity and self-awareness. And so this is your opportunity to show that when you are faced with a challenge, you respond with maturity and self-awareness. And it is also a way for you to show that you are ready for medical school, because everything you've heard about how hard medical school is absolutely true. And there are going to be moments when you're going to hit a wall or you're going to struggle. And what we want to know is that you have already figured out that when things get tough, you know how to get around that wall, under that wall, over that wall. You know how to ask for help. Maybe somebody you need to stand on their shoulders in order to get over the wall. And so this is your chance to really demonstrate that you've got those competencies that are so important. Finally, let's look at how has serving others contributed to your professional growth and motivation to attend medical school. So UNR Med is all about serving others, serving our community, being engaged with Nevada. We want to understand what serving others has done for you and how it has positioned you and made you ready for a profession where you are going to be asked to constantly put others in front of yourself. So each one of these questions essentially is going to give you that opportunity. And then there's one final question where you're invited to provide a brief statement about anything you haven't previously addressed or disclosed on your application that you want the admissions committee to know about you. And I would encourage you to really think about, was there something about your readiness, your fit, your passion that you really didn't fully get to on the other aspects of the application? This is your chance to make sure the admissions committee knows those things. All right, so tips as you're reading these questions, ask yourself, why is it UNR Med admissions committee is asking me this question? What are they trying to understand about me? How does the question tie into UNR Med's vision and mission and core values? And if you need to go back and read those pages, read some dean's reflections, read the medical education program objectives, figure out what it is and how it ties in to who we are as a school. Ask yourself, what do they want to know about me? What is there that I can tell them by answering these questions that will help them understand who I am? And after creating a list of possible answers, choose the example that really best illustrates what you think the admission committee wants to understand about you. And then finally, ask yourself, does my response provide insight into those three things? Does it help the committee understand my passion, my readiness, and my value, the value that I'll add to UNR Med or my fit? All right, so that's secondary questions. Before we move on to MMIs, I want to ask if there's any specific questions about secondary. And you are welcome to put it in the chat or to unmute your mic and go ahead and ask a question. All right, well, keep thinking about those. And we will move on to the MMI section. I do want to respond quickly, though, to Katie, who had a question about whether California is on the out-of-state school list. California itself is not. However, the counties that border the eastern side of the Sierras, they are all eligible to apply if you reside in one of those communities. All right, Andre, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Tamara, and let me share my screen. I'm sharing the right screen. All righty. I think it's sharing. Are you all able to see our handsome wolf? All right, cool, perfect. Let's go ahead and jump right into this. Let me actually move this over here. Let me stop sharing. Sorry about that. I need to move in front of my camera so I'm looking at you all. Sorry about that. I'm having some difficulties right now. Is it still sharing? I don't have my share
I'm not
button. Okay, hold on.
Andre, do you want to send it to me and I can share?
Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, everyone. I have a presentation. I really do. I just have to get it to share now. I don't know what's going on with it. Tamara, yes, I'm going to send it over. All right, if you just want to, do you still have it, the PowerPoint? I didn't really do anything.
Yeah, I don't think I have some of the new slides you have, but we can kind of work those in.
Okay, cool. Perfect.
All right.
Yeah, I'm not for sure what happened.
I know it feels like we think we've conquered Zoom, and it still surprises us sometimes.
Thank you, Tamara, and I appreciate all of your patience as well. Thank you much. We practiced this beforehand, and then we didn't have any issues, and here we are. Alrighty. So yeah, whenever you're ready, Tamara, I am good to go. If you want to just.
All right, can you see the screen? Andre, can you see the screen?
Now I can. Yes. Okay.
Okay.
There we go.
All right, it's all yours.
Alrighty, so thank you. Yeah, so great job, Tamara. Thank you so much for going over secondaries and letting students know exactly what we expect from them when it comes to secondaries. Now we're going to jump over to the MMIs, the multiple mini interviews. And so these interviews for this year, they are going to be virtual. We will not have in-person interviews. They're going to be virtual and asynchronous. So basically, you're going to be talking to yourself. You're not going to have anyone responding to you or anything like that. You're going to be given 1 minute to read and or listen to the question. The question will be posted during the duration of the interview. So should it be a two-part question, you can always kind of just glance over to the side of the screen and just jog your memory about what that question was so that you're able to answer it in its entirety or feel like you've given a proper answer to the question. Um, each of the questions are going to be 3 to 5 minutes. You have, or I should say, you have 3 to 5 minutes to record your response to the question and time to respond to a follow-up question. So in certain cases, you are going to have follow-up questions after your original question to whatever that scenario may be right there. So be prepared for those. And in the 3 to 5 minutes, you don't necessarily have to use all 5 minutes, but you don't only want to use 2 minutes. You want to, the more, the better. So we want to make sure that you're answering the questions and that you feel like you've given a proper answer. Say you get to 4 minutes and you felt like you've answered everything about that question and you don't have anything to add, that is totally fine. But if you answered it in a minute and a half to 2 minutes, that means that you haven't given us enough to really grade you on how you responded to that question. And so your responses will be reviewed by trained reviewers that include medical students, physicians, faculty, and staff. So anyone that's going to be reviewing your application will have to have gone through training. And so they are going to be very well versed on what to be looking for as far as those core competencies and things like that. So they're going to be able to really judge how you answer those questions. Thank you, Tamara. And so the MMI question types, you're going to answer one passion, pathway to medicine questions, and you're going to respond to 7 to 8 hypothetical scenarios. So there's no right or wrong answer. Like I said, we want to make sure that you're answering the question to the best of your ability and what you believe, how you believe that scenario should be handled. So don't worry about, you don't have to worry about us asking you any type of questions about, hey, if you were a I should say if you were a doctor, but you don't have to worry about any type of questions that have to do with physicians or anything like that. You're going to have to deal with scenarios, but we're not going to ask you MD type questions to where you have to know certain things. None of that right there. We want you to be very privy to what's going on in the state of Nevada, what's going on in the country, and just know. So, like I said, these are all hypothetical. There's no right or wrong answer. We just want to make sure that you answer it genuinely. Alrighty, so the MMI interviewing dues. These are very important right here. If you all have your phone, you want to take a screenshot of this, you can do that. I'll also be sending out the recording to this video as well. So be on the lookout for that sometime in the next week. But here we are. So read the instructions, include it with your invitation and get familiar with the software platform. So like I said, we will be utilizing HireVue for our MMI interviews this year. So just get familiar with that. Practice, like go into HireVue, use your own webcam on your phone and record yourself and set a timer and just kind of really get used to what 3 to 5 minutes feels like to answer a question, because you're going to feel like you're talking forever, but it's only going to be 45 seconds at that point. And it looks really awkward when you're talking and yourself is talking back to you because it just looks strange. Okay. And so then you want to read the full question, listen to the question, and then reread the question. Make sure you truly understand the question and what it is that they are asking. How are you going to apply these AAMC 15 core competencies to this question? Which one best fits in right here? Okay. Before you begin responding, restate the scenario in your response and briefly outline who is involved and what the issue or situation is that you are going to address. So there's going to be a beginning, a middle, and an end. So just make sure you have that all within your MMI question. Don't try to jump around and go from the beginning portion to the end and then back up. That's totally fine, but we really want you to sit there and think about your response before you give it, okay? Provide reflective responses that demonstrate what you would do in that situation. Explain why and how you would respond. So when you're thinking about providing reflective responses, think about situations that you were in and how you handled those situations. Really think about what you learned in those situations so that when you are talking and answering a scenario, you are able to take that and apply it to that question, right? To the whatever the question may be. You're able to take it and apply it, okay? And another do, and what I should be doing right now is breathing. Take your time. If needed, take a pause and reread the question. You don't want to just start rambling and then start thinking like, oh, I should have said this or I should have said that. Just take your time and really dive into the question and figure out what it is that we are asking in that question. There is a competency that matches up with every question that we're going to ask you. So really think about how that competency pertains to that question, okay? Use as much of the allotted time as possible. More is generally better. So like I said, you don't want to have a 2-minute response. A 5-minute response is great, but if you get to that sweet spot, 3 to 4 minutes, that's perfectly fine right there as well. Okay, just really be confident in the answer that you provided and just know that, sorry, just really be for that. And the answer, yeah, there you go. Thank you, Tamara. MMI interviewing don'ts. So you don't want to skip any part of the question or prompt. Make sure you answer the question in its entirety. So please really focus on, like I said, what the question is asking. Read it. Don't just start answering the question before you've thought of an answer. Please do not have a scripted or rehearsed answer. It will not come off as genuine to the reviewers, and that's not going to go over well for the grading portion of it. In there's really no way that you can actually have a rehearsed question or answer, I should say, because the questions are going to be very different. You may have friends that are going to go through the MMI before you and they can possibly give you some tips on them, but don't try to script an answer for a particular question because you may not have that exact same question either. So let's just make sure that when you're speaking, you've thought of it and it's not rehearsed. Please don't get discouraged from a previous question. Move on to the next question. What we don't want to happen is that you're thinking about the last question and how you should have answered that question, because now those thoughts are going to seep into the current question that you are focusing on at that moment, and you're not going to really allow for us to get a grasp on how you would have really handled that situation right there because you're still thinking about the previous question. This is the best thing about the MMI. Say you don't do so well in one section of the MMI, well, you have other stations to make up for that. This is why we do it this way, because sometimes you just don't do well in a station, and that's okay because you have other stations to make up for that. Don't say things like, you know what I mean. This is really important right here. If you have a beginning, a middle, and an end to your response, then there shouldn't be a you know what I mean. If the person, the reviewer has to really think about what you're trying to say, or you feel like you need to say you know what I mean, then more than likely you need to give a little bit more context, provide just some more meat to that answer right there so that it is very clear what you mean. And am I interviewing some more dudes? I don't know what happened. See? Hey. The screen disappeared, Tamara. Not for sure why.
All right, I'm not sure. Did it disappear for everyone? No. Okay, I'll just.
Okay, hold on. No, here we go. You know what happened? Someone popped into the waiting room and it kicked me off of your screen.
Okay.
There we go. All right, I'm back here. All righty, so no right answers. Tell us how you will respond. Be yourself. Be professional and showcase your passion, readiness, and fit. So being professional means that we want you to take this seriously. We want you to dress professionally. What did they say? Professional top, party down low. No, dress professional all the way down. If you feel good and you feel professional, it's going to show in this particular portion of the MMI as you're going through the interviews. Feel good about yourself. Um, and showcase your passion, your readiness, and fit. We want you to take everything that you've learned leading up to this point and apply it to these questions. Be passionate in your answers. We don't want you yelling at the screen, jumping around and singing and doing all that. But we also don't want you, your hand on your head and you're answering the question. No, we want you to act like as if there was myself, Tamara, and other people from the medical school sitting there interviewing you. Take this very seriously. And so deconstructing an MMI scenario, so we're just going to give you an example of what a question looks like. A close friend in one of your university classes tells you that his mother was recently diagnosed with breast cancer. He feels overwhelmed by his studies and is considering dropping his courses to spend more time with his mother. How do you counsel your friend? So this is what we want you to do. We want you to brainstorm how you would answer this and define the primary problem. Once you've done those two things in that little minute that you have, then you're going to move on. How is this relevant to being a medical student or a physician? Does it tie into your passion for medicine? And then you want to elaborate on that a little bit more. What competencies, attributes, or skills can you demonstrate in your response to this question? So this is when it's really important to really understand and dive into the AAMC core competencies and figure out how you're going to apply these to the questions. So I encourage all of you to really go on over to the AAMC's core competency page, because this is what we base all of our responses off of. How did this apply to the competency? So go over there, get familiar with them, figure out which ones you need to work on so that when you are at the MMI, or when you are going through the MMI, I should say, and even for your secondary questions, you're able to really just point out which one applies to what, okay? And how would your response help you demonstrate your fit with UNR Med's culture? And so Tamara kind of went over what our values are, what we look for in students. So we want to make sure that your response fits in and ties into the things that we are looking for in a student. We want to bring you into a class that's going to be welcoming. We don't want to bring someone in that's going to disrupt what we have going on. Our students, they work very close together. It's all about just collaboration and being there for one another. So we want to make sure that you're going to fit in with our students and kind of have the same type of mindset as our students as well.
Now, I just wanted to add a little bit more to this process of thinking about the question. So as we mentioned, you're only going to get about a minute to read the question. And you also will have a video that you can watch where someone will read it out loud, because some of us are more auditory. And so we've given you these ideas of then how do you get started? You're not going to have time to make a list and brainstorm and think about each one of these questions. And so really, in order to be ready for MMI, what this essentially means is you need to practice. So that then when you see a question, you've already done this several times. If you took this question and you asked yourself, okay, how would I answer this? If you do this slowly a few times with a few questions, what you'll do is the same thing you do with MCAT. You'll get so that you can respond quickly. You'll be able to look at something and you'll say really quickly, oh, wow, I bet they want to know that if I'm compassionate, because that's an important competency to have as a physician. Or, they want to know how I'm going to communicate with someone. So if you can do this a few times, go to websites, Google MMI questions, and really give yourself time between now and when you start receiving secondaries and then invitations for MMI, because the earliest you're probably going to interview is August. You've got time to spend a couple of hours every week between now and then doing some practice questions, getting more familiar, thinking about the competencies that we're looking for, what's important to us. And if you can practice that, then you're going to find that by the time you get a brand new question, you're going to be able to do that a little bit quicker. That you're not going to have to literally go through each one of these questions. So think of this as a guideline on how to practice, not that you're going to actually have time in an interview setting. It's very much like preparing for a job interview. And so I encourage you not just to look at MMI questions. Many jobs use competency-based questions. So if you've decided that by looking at our website and our mission, that having a service orientation is pretty important to us, A, you would be right. And B, you could probably Google, how do I respond to questions that want to know if I'm service oriented? And you're going to find a bunch of questions. They might not be specifically MMI. Good ones on that are teamwork. Most employers are looking for good team players. So Google, what are interview questions about teamwork? And I guarantee that what you're going to do is be able to find a lot of practice questions and then practice this process of how, when I see a question, what do I need to think about? And then practice responding out loud so that you feel comfortable being able to respond in a fairly brief period of time. All right. Reminder of the professional competencies. These are AAMCs. So we're not going to be asking you science questions. We're not going to be asking you questions that test your knowledge of medicine. So you can kind of discount that, you know, am I ready for medical school? When it comes to MMIs, you're not going to see that there. What you're really going to see is how do you add value? What are the competencies you've developed that will make you a good fit with our medical school? So that we can see one more place in your application that you can demonstrate that you have these competencies. So I would focus on those that you see on AAMC's website, and know that while we are not going to have one question per competency, we're going to be assessing various competencies in each question. So unlike some processes where this is just a question about cultural competence, we may be asking about cultural competence and resilience and communication skills all at one time. That's important for you because, as Andre mentioned, if you have a question where it just throws you off your game or you don't feel like you responded as well as you wanted, know that the competencies that are being tested in that question, they're going to come up again in another question. So you've got multiple opportunities to demonstrate that you're a good fit for UNR Med, that you have the competencies that are important as an entering medical student. We already did that one. All right. Andre, do you want to do how to prep?
Yeah, definitely. So kind of what Tamara was just speaking about, how you prep for them. You want to go to Google. You want to just type in MMI scenarios, different types of questions. You really want to get an understanding of what an MMI is going to be like, and especially in a virtual setting. So like I was saying, you want to practice with friends. You want to practice recording yourself. You want to time yourself. Just get really familiar with what 3 to 5 minutes looks like. Practice describing your experiences. So really go back and dive into your application as well and look for those meaningful experiences that you have went through, so that when it is time to kind of, so then when you are in the MMI, you can kind of reflect on those and talk about those meaningful experiences and how they've helped shape you into who you are now and why you are ready to apply to our med school and be admitted to our med school. We hope to see all of you in medical school, whether it's at UNR Med or elsewhere, but we prefer you be at UNR Med, all right? So we're going to do everything that we can on our end to make sure that that happens, all right? Time yourself, like I said, and get used to talking and keep up to date on current events and issues related to medicine, access to medicine, healthcare disparities, etc. So it's really important that you are up to date with what is going on in the state of Nevada, because we are here to create a healthy Nevada. That's what we want all of our incoming students to understand, that our job is to create a healthy Nevada. So if you know what's going on in Nevada, you kind of understand what a lot of these shortcomings are and where we really need help at, okay? So those are some ways to prepare. I also just dropped in some links into the chat. These very exact links that are on the page right now, I just threw them in the chat for you. So please highlight those and save them, click them and open them, whatever is easiest for you. And then as well, when I send out the email with the recording, I'll also include these links for you. So no issues right there, but AAMC's Med Interviews, Do's and Don'ts podcast on MMI, everything you need to know, and AAMC, what and why for MMI. So get familiar with these web pages right here, because all of this stuff is going to do nothing but help prepare you for the actual MMI. You can't be over prepared. You can definitely be under prepared, but you can never have too much preparation. So get familiar. Practice with friends, family members. Practice with, I don't want to say people you don't know, because they might say, hold on, that's a little strange if you ask them to practice with you, but you can practice with people that you know who you aren't as comfortable with, because, you know, people that you aren't as comfortable with, you're going to take it a little bit more serious with them. Whereas if you're doing it with your friend or if you're doing it with a relative or something, you don't take it as serious. So I'm not saying you won't, but in a lot of cases you don't. So practice with people who you aren't as comfortable with, but you have a decent relationship with. And so now we're going to jump into the questions. And Tamara, if you want to stop sharing, I kind of have the questions here and I'll just read them off.
Great. All right, several of you submitted questions and we want to make sure that we respond to as many of those as we can. If you didn't submit a question, but a question has now come up after listening to us, please don't hesitate to put that in the chat.
All right. And so we actually do have a question that popped up in the chat and we'll answer that one first. So how does UNR Med use the Altus Suite components?
All right, so for any of you who aren't familiar with Altus assessments, they are an organization that has dedicated themselves to helping medical schools and other institutions of higher learning develop assessment tools. We know that right now you already have a lot of ways to tell us about how you demonstrate passion and fit and readiness, but what the Altus tools do is just give us one more data point. So the one that you're probably most familiar with is a situational judgment test called CASPER. And at this stage for UNR Med, we are not actively using it or weighting it in our decision about your application. It doesn't quite fit into our holistic review yet. So what we're doing is we are gathering data about how CASPER correlates with the competencies that we value as an institution. And we have just completed the submission of all of our data from the last 2 years. We're doing the research so that we'll be able to decide, is this a good assessment tool to add? And if it's so, at what stage of the program? So what you'll see is that some medical schools may use it as a way to pare down their application pool as a data point to help select who gets interviews. At this stage, we're not doing that. We're doing a pretty holistic review of everyone's application in advance and then deciding if they get an interview unless you're a Nevada resident. And then as long as you meet criteria, you're going to get an interview during this next year. So I would say that it's not something you can study for, and I would discourage you from spending any time worrying about the score in terms of applying to UNR Med. Instead, take the exam. What you're doing is contributing to science and research by giving us some information so we can decide whether this particular tool is valuable in assessing someone's capacity to be a good medical student. And it may, and it may not. Now, they've also created a new tool that is being piloted this year, which is called Duet. And Duet is going to ask you a series of questions that what they're hoping will help you kind of narrow in on what's important to you in a medical school. And then they've asked all of us at UNR Med to do the same. What are the things that are really great about our programs, our culture, what's important to us in terms of our teaching style? And we have taken the assessment and what they've done is built a profile. So what they're going to do with Duet is be able to tell us, does your profile align with our profile? So we go back to those items that we're trying to assess. This is one that we think may be able to tell us, are you a good fit with UNR Med? Now, I don't think it's going to be any substitute for actually reading your personal statement and your secondary essays and all of those sorts of things. So it's never going to be a score that outweighs our holistic review, but what we're hoping is that it will augment it. So we are one of the pilot schools for Duet. If you take it, again, you're contributing to resources and research so that we can make sure that when we are reviewing applications that we are using as much information as possible to make the best decisions possible. So in terms of that, take those as questionnaires in a sense. The situational judgment measures a lot of the same things we're looking for in secondary essays and MMIs, and we're actually doing some correlation to find out just how much CASPER and Duet in the end help us as tools. Hope that helps.
It did. Thank you very much.
Great. All right.
Next question is, will you review applications prior to receiving an MCAT score?
So no, we will not. We will require you to get that MCAT taken before we will take a look at your application. We'll require the MCAT before you receive a secondary. I know that you get a lot of messages about how important it is to apply early and take your MCAT early. I want to put that in a little bit of context. UNR Med does not use rolling admissions. The earliest that we will review your application, unless you are early decision, is in December. And so this gives you really plenty of time. You don't want to wait until October 1st, the deadline to submit things, because that just adds stress to your life and could create problems if there's something missing from your application. So I would say that focus on getting ready to submit your AMCAS this month, next month. That way you'll get your secondary sometime in August and be able to sit for your interview in September or October, maybe November at the latest. But once you've completed that interview, then you are going to go into a great big pile of everyone who's completed an interview. We can only review about 100 applications per month in December, January, and February. And so yes, it's important to kind of keep this process moving along. Now, I want to make sure you understand that if you're applying to other schools, you need to know if they're on rolling admissions, because if they are, then applying early could be really beneficial to you. So take all of those factors into consideration. But no, unfortunately, we've got to have that MCAT. It is a threshold that you need to meet in order to be eligible to receive a secondary, to get an interview, and to be reviewed by our committee.
Thank you, Tamara. Let's jump into an out-of-state one. How should out-of-state applicants approach their secondaries?
Let's see. Yes. So does this mean that my primary was reviewed and UNR Med saw something that made them consider me as a potential student? So you are going to have an opportunity to submit a secondary as long as you're from one of those eligible states. But your secondary is going to be a very important factor in whether you get an interview if you're an out-of-state applicant. And because we only have so many slots for interviews for our out-of-state. Last year it was 50. And we had, I think, almost 700 applications. So as the interview selection committee is reviewing your application, they are going to be primarily focused on your secondary, because that's where you're able to talk about why you UNR Med, why you're a fit, why you care about Nevada, or what you can learn by coming to Nevada. And those are the things that we are looking for in deciding that the very small number of out-of-states that we enroll. We interview 50. This year, we're going to probably enroll either 5 or 6 in the class. And so if you're out of state, you really got to have a clear idea and be able to articulate why you're a good fit for our school.
Thank you, Tamara. How quickly should we turn in our secondaries? When should we expect an interview invite?
All right, so you're going to have 1 week from the date that the email was sent. So I do want to mention that occasionally an email will go into a spam folder and you'll suddenly realize that you got a secondary invite and you have 1 day left to respond. We know that this can happen. So first and foremost, make sure that you are checking your spam folder during application season. On occasion, if something like that were to happen, we had someone who was living abroad and was having trouble getting access to their email. We will entertain on a case-by-case basis, making a small extension to secondaries. But it takes a pretty exceptional circumstance and a little bit of proof of what happened. So for the most part, know that when you get that email, be watching for it. And it will usually come within a week or 2 weeks at the most after AMCAS is verified and released your application to us, that you're going to open it and have 1 week from when the email date is to be able to return that response. And we typically try to get on a normal schedule. We're hoping this year it will be Thursdays that those messages go out, but we can't guarantee it. We always try to make sure that you have a weekend as part of that week in order to respond.
If selected for an interview, will there be any opportunities for on-campus introductions or tours?
So if you're accepted for an interview, you will receive an invitation to participate in a virtual preview event where you'll have a chance to interact with students, some members of our faculty. However, right now we are not planning on any on-campus events until after you've been admitted. Once you've been admitted, you will have a chance to come for second look. We're also going to do some first look events that are more virtual. And if you're not able to attend on the dates when second look are set up, you would be able to contact us and we would arrange for a visit to campus.
And so here we are. What are the top 3 things that admissions looks for in a prospective student during an MMI? And I think we pretty much covered that in the, but.
I wish there were a top 3. I really did. That would make my job a lot easier. But when you're doing holistic review, it really means that they're looking at every individual. And so your top 3, the things that you're really great at, your strengths, they're important and they tell us who you are. But there could be some other applicant who has another top 3 strengths that are just as appealing and just as important. And so it's really critical for you to understand that this is about you telling your story. But you want to do it in a way, again, that goes back to what I shared, that demonstrates that you're ready for medical school, that you are excited about learning, that you love medicine, that you're passionate about it, that you see UNR Med as a place that you could be, that you appreciate that we want a culture of diversity and inclusion, that you are looking for a school that is small and kind of the place where you'll get to know everyone. So think about, I would just say, really do self-reflection. Assess what are your strengths. And there's a self-assessment you can do through AAMC about those 15 core competencies. Figure out what your strengths are and then tell us about it and tell us why those strengths are going to contribute and add value as a medical student, as a member of our community, as delivering care to Nevada folks, and to just, amplifying and making the profession of medicine better. But if it helps, go back to passion, readiness, and fit, and think about maybe your strengths in those 3 areas.
Alrighty, cool. And I'm not seeing any other questions popping up in the chat right now, other than a couple private ones that I'm responding to, but I don't have any other questions. Oh, here we are. Regarding the academic letter of evaluation, I'm sorry, I missed that one. Does that letter need to be from a biology or chemistry professor, or would a letter from a faculty member in another field be okay?
So I think as long as you provide that letter writer with there's a information for letter writers that's available by AAMC, and it's also on our application requirements page under letters of evaluation. You want them to be able to address certain things. And so letters of evaluation by professors really can help us understand your readiness to be a medical student. So if that professor can tell us about your ability to be successful in the classroom, to improve over time, your commitment to learning, your intellectual curiosity, maybe how you've applied your knowledge that you've learned as a tutor in a research lab, something along those lines. If they can address those things, and by the time the admissions committee member's done reading it, they better understand your readiness for a really rigorous graduate level, professional level curriculum, then I think that letter is just fine. Because honestly, we can assess your knowledge of biology by looking at your grades in biology classes, by looking at your performance on the MCAT. We can pretty much get that. We don't necessarily need a biology professor to tell us that you know biology. Not to say that those aren't great references, because they go back to addressing your intellectual curiosity, your contributions in the classroom, your ability to work in a team, all of those other things that are also really important to us. So yes, I would say that you can go with another professor. Just make sure they understand why medicine, they have a sense of who you are, and then that they understand the important things that they want to address in writing that letter. Because they may not, unlike the biology professor, write 30 or 40 of them a year.
Awesome. Okay, let's see. I know there was a couple more questions. Okay, here we go. As an out-of-state applicant, if I end up getting offered a secondary application, does this mean that my primary was reviewed and UNR saw something that made them consider me as a potential student?
Yeah, I think I got a little bit on that one before, but let me elaborate a little bit more. Everyone will receive a secondary invitation, but you're going to answer some questions right off the bat to make sure you're eligible to fill out that secondary, because we don't want you to spend $75 if you don't meet the MCAT, if you don't meet the GPA, if you aren't from one of our eligible states. And then it will really be in that secondary that we're going to be looking for information on whether you'll go on in the process and get an interview.
Thank you. And is it all right if we answer a secondary prompt by elaborating on one of our activities or something from our personal statement, or should we find new things to talk about?
I think this is one of those questions where it depends. So you may have referenced a specific experience, either on your experience list, maybe talking about it being meaningful, or within your personal statement. But you may not have addressed it in the way the question is asked. So you might have, shared a whole bunch of information about a particular clinical experience, how it motivated you, how it was an important aspect on your pathway to medicine. And then maybe the question is more about how did you, something about caring for patients, or I think our question is about providing service to others. And maybe there was an experience within that experience that you feel like you can address in the personal statement. That's perfectly okay to do. Just don't be super repetitive. If you've already explained how that, maybe how that patient influenced you or how it made you feel serving others in your personal statement, then I would look for another experience to expand upon and help us better understand kind of where you're coming from. So it's really a judgment call that you need to think about. Is this the best example that I had? Don't be repetitive, because you'd be losing valuable opportunities to give another example. But if it is just simply a different aspect of that experience that you now feel like you can expand upon, then I think that's just fine.
And we have a courtesy question. For the work and activity section of the primary application, will you be contacting the contacts listed? We just want to know in advance so they can let them know to be look out.
No.
That's a lot of people to contact.
That's a lot of people to contact, and we are a very small staff who works very hard, and no, we're not going to do that. However, you are going to have a background check before you get to matriculate to medical school. Every once in a while, something gets a red flag. They'll say, this just doesn't sound right. In cases like those, the admissions committee could say, could someone reach out to this person, because it just sounds strange or unusual, or I don't think it's possible that this person actually did what they said they did. It does not happen very often, but no, this is sort of your honor system to tell us about your experiences, the hours that you put in. And again, we're counting on you to show integrity in this process. We're expecting you to. And but trust me, karma is true. And if there's something there that isn't correct, eventually it will come out. And so just be yourselves, be true to who you are, tell us what you've done, and demonstrate to us that you've got the competencies to be a great medical student.
Thank you, Tamara. And let's see, I think we had two more questions. Are reapplicants viewed any differently than first-time applicants, whether positively or negatively? And if so, how?
I think honestly, yes, they are viewed differently, because we know that this is someone who really wants to come to UNR Med, so much so that they have continuously prepared to be a good applicant. What I can tell you is when it can work against you is if the second you submitted your first application, you're like, oh, done, let's wait to see what they say. And you kind of just stop getting ready for medical school. You stop scribing, you stop taking additional courses, you didn't worry about learning more, you kind of just binge watched all your favorite shows. That's going to work against you. We need to understand that this is something that is so important to you that you just continued getting ready to be ready for medical school over the course of the year after you were not admitted. And it's tough because sometimes you don't hear that you're not admitted till February. You only have a few months to apply. So I'm going to put this advice out there. right now to all of you who are applying for the first time. 75% of students who apply to medical school do not get in the first time they apply. And that is a hard number to hear. And we all have confirmation bias and we think, no, I'm going to be the 25% who does. So it is really critical and important that if medical school is where you want to be, that from here on out, you are all in. You are taking classes, you are engaging in service to your community, you are gaining clinical experiences, you are reading articles about what's going on in the healthcare profession, you're following med Twitter, you are doing all of the things that get you ready to be a good applicant. And that way, if it comes time and you are not one of those 25% granted admission, you are well on your way to having a stronger application when you reapply. And if you do that, as a reapplicant, it will work in your favor. And if you don't, it may work against you.
Thank you, Tamara. And here we are. There used to be a requirement that non-traditional students took 6 credits of upper division coursework in the last few years. It is my understanding that that requirement has been lifted, and I just wanted to verify that I did understand that policy change correctly.
That is accurate. This year, the admissions committee made a decision to stop requiring 6 credits of coursework within the last 3 years before you matriculate. However, let me put a caveat on that. Part of the reason they did this is because some applicants are full-time nurses and they're nursing. They're gaining clinical experience, and asking them to go back and take some more biology classes, it kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, at the same time, if you are not someone out there who's out there and engaged in clinical environment, you probably want to think about getting back into school and getting ready for medical school. So taking some courses is not going to hurt you at all. And if you were someone who previously did not have all your prerequisites, or maybe your GPA was not as strong, going back and taking some classes as a non-traditional student is an excellent way to show that you're committed to learning and that you are ready to perform at a high level in medical school. So even though the requirement's been removed, you really need to make a personal call. Does my undergraduate GPA and the courses I took demonstrate that I'm ready for medical school? Or as a non-traditional applicant, would doing these things make my application stronger?
Awesome. And that was the last question that we had in the chat room. So thank you all for your excellent questions. I'm pretty sure everyone was able to take something from each individual answer, and we're going to be able to apply it to this upcoming cycle. And we're just excited for all of you and for this opportunity. So thank you all for being in attendance this evening. Tamara?
Yeah, we're so excited that you're applying to UNR Med, that you're interested in being part of our community. I love your passion and how much you want to be doctors. And I know that this is sometimes a really frustrating process. It's a scary process. You don't know what's going to happen. So have faith in yourself, have confidence in who you are as an individual. Tell us your story, tell us about your passion, tell us how ready you are to be a great medical student and how you fit with our school. If you'll do those things, then I guarantee that even if you don't get in, you're going to come across as a great person, and we are going to cheer for you to reapply. I wish that we had a school of a size that we could admit every single person who meets our requirements. This is not an easy process for anyone who's involved. They understand the enormity of their responsibility in considering your application and making selections for our incoming class. So I wish you each all the best in this. Have patience. There is a long wait involved in getting decision letters unless you apply early decision, and then you know by October. So just stay positive. Do as much as you can to stay on track, even as you're going through this process, because whether we see you matriculating with our class next year or perhaps reapplying another year, we want you to be successful. And we hope that the things that we've shared today will help you make informed decisions and approach this in an informed manner. All right. Have a wonderful week, everyone. Stay cool. It's going to get hot here in Reno, up to 100 degrees. And I know all of you down in Vegas, that seems like nothing, but I hope everyone stays cool and has a great week.
Definitely. thank you all. I just threw my email address in the chat box. If any of you ever have questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly, and I'll be sure to respond to you in a timely manner. I am here in Las Vegas, like Tamara said, so if there's an opportunity for us to meet in person or we host any events here, I would love for you all to come out, all right? So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Sorry, quickly mention, I'm putting in our general email account. Think of this as a triage email. And if you will send messages here instead of directly to Andre or myself, then you don't have to worry that I'm on vacation and I don't see your question. You don't have to worry that I've got a very full email box that I missed it. By sending it to officeofadmissions@med.unr.edu, you will get a priority reply from someone. And sometimes it'll be me, and sometimes it'll be Andre, and sometimes it'll be one of our admissions operations specialists. So please use that email if you're looking for a quick response. Otherwise, go ahead and send it to me, and I'll get back to you when I can.
And you can cancel out my email address that I just provided and simply stick with the Office of Admissions.
Finally, if you run into a situation where you really feel like you've got an exceptional case, something unusual that's going on, I am happy to set an appointment in those cases and visit with you. But generally speaking, we've got an amazing admissions team here who all want to help you and respond to your questions. So if you'll send it to that general account, we'll make sure that you get questions to your answers to your questions. All right, it's the end of the day. I think it's time to sign off.
Thank you all, and I'll be sending out this recording to you all, okay? Take care now, everyone. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
I had a quick question just for a small, I applied early decision, and I was just wondering if there's a timeline that I could be expecting secondaries and interview, just so then I can better prepare.
So keep an eye on MCAS.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing, Carson, because you previously applied, I believe that your verification is going to go pretty quickly. They're not going to
finished in 15 minutes.
Okay.
So
I've never heard of that happening, and
that's what happens when you already went through this. So you are going to release your MCAS to us at the end of June.
Mm-hmm.
My guess is that we won't start sending out secondaries for about a week after that, but I would start being diligent and checking your email account anytime from July 1st through July 15th.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you to you both for all the great information. I'm super excited for this year. Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
And Joshua, you heard that response, right? So I said it was going to come out later on, but it's actually going to be a little bit earlier than that. So.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
I had a quick follow-up question. So I was the one who asked about the undergraduate courses the last 3 years. So I was actually planning on applying last year, and I used that policy to delay my application. So I took a course last semester at UNR. I did really well in it. I got an A, but I just wanted to plan about the future if I should plan to take another course. I actually have a graduate degree in like a STEM field. It's just not biology or chemistry. And I wanted to get some insight.
Yeah, Robbie, you are kind of the person that was in mind when we decided that this was probably a policy that could go away. Because by looking at your graduate work, especially in a STEM field, we're going to understand where you are in terms of readiness for medical school. And so it just kind of got to the point where we're like, why are we asking them to take 2 more classes when there is more than enough information here to make a decision? So no, you should not feel compelled to take another class unless, of course, there's something that really interests you and you just think, this is what I want to do in the year before I go to medical school is gather a little bit more information that may help me do better. But it's now up to you whether you want to do that, because even if you were to take a class in the fall, chances are we're not going to see the grade for that class. We're going to know that you're taking a class, but I think you're